Hi folks, welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic with myself, Dave Anderson. I'm also contributor to Serverless Edge and technical fellow at Our Voice. So today we have a very special guest, BMK from DevOps New Zealand. Hi BMK, nice to see you.
Hey David, good to see you here and thank you very much. We were together in the DevOps Enterprise Summit, the Lean Coffee session.
Yes, that's right.
Talking about it. It's good to be here, and congratulations on your book as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's right. We had a great breakout at the Virtual Summit a few years ago. Myself, yourself, Mark, and Mike. We had a great conversation. So, so it's fantastic. Do you want to maybe just give us a quick introduction before we kick off?
Sure. Hey, folks, thank you very much for having me here in this episode, and great to be here and good to talk about some of the things which are closer to our heart in general. My name is BMK Lakshminarayanan. I'm based out of Wellington, New Zealand. At the moment, I'm a transformation architect and an independent consultant. I work for a company at the moment called Section 6. And we are a small engineering firm where we help number of customers on the containers and cloud and DevOps and some of the modern engineering and architecture practices. So that's what we do. I've spent a good amount of time in my last 14, 15 years with a bank called Bank of New Zealand. And as part of that work, I've done some good work in connecting with a lot of DevOps practitioners, thought leaders, speakers, and so on. That's how I met David as well, and also part of the extended DevOps community. So that's me.
Excellent, brilliant. Yeah, no, we've interacted quite a lot around the DevOps Enterprise Summit with IT Revolution. I mean, I just think that's such a fantastic community. It's so rich, the amount of kind of experts gathered in so many forums. So I mean, I certainly get a huge amount out of it. The thing that struck me when especially when we had that Lean Coffee a few years back was the aspect of value engineering, and with large enterprises finding the value in engineering. I think, I mean, that's really what we talk about an awful lot in the book, The Value Flywheel Effect. So, I mean, I've called it modernization, to be honest, but it's really about just getting impact for your investment in IT. I mean, and I love the fact that you would use the term value engineering a lot. I mean, do you want to share about that? What do you think of value in IT?
Yeah, so my previous role was actually a value stream architect, and the concept of how do we connect anything and everything that you do in your technology in general IT, and how do you make that impactful for your business, right? When you say impactful for your business, it's all about value for your customers, value for your business. And that includes making wise decision about your technology investments, what kind of portfolio, what kind of architecture, what kind of your tech engineering practices and agile practices. All this matters a lot, actually. So value, in my view, it's like two things. Number one, what is that your customer getting out of your service or product? So for example, if it's an e-commerce retail or a banking or a single product company like a Spotify or Amazon, something like that. So what is the value that the customer is getting? So I always say that three things: customer value. Number one, what is the value that customer is getting in terms of spending their time? Number one. Number two, what is the value they get out from the product and service for the money that they spend on your product or services? And number three, are they really happy with the service and product that you're offering? So this is from the customer point of view, right? And the other side of the coin is actually the business value. What is the business getting out of this, actually? So because the software that you're running in production, is it generating the revenue for your business? Whether the business, what is the IT investments are they making? Are they getting really a good return of value, for that? For example, sometimes you spend $1 and your return on investment is actually $1. So the question is actually, is it a good investment or a bad investment, right? And the same thing goes like, if can I get good return for the investment, IT investment that I'm making? Because this is what the business value comes in, right? Because if the business is actually saving money using technology and they can do more with the less, then probably the investment will increase as they go forward. And all the studies that we have seen in the last few years with Gartner and Forrester and all the big analysts, they say the technology investments keep going. It means that technology is definitely giving the value what they are after, but my thinking is, can we do even better? That's the whole idea.
I think that's brilliant. That's such a good way to look at it, that idea of value for the business and value for the customer. it's something that struck me forever. And before I figured out what this meant, I would always ask teams, why are you doing that? That was always my measure. Does the team understand why they're creating software? And many times engineers are just coding because they enjoy coding, which is good. But you need to be very clear on what is your customer value and what is the business value. And one of the things we talk about is your clarity of purpose or your North Star. And it's always what I would call an anti-pattern. If a team don't know why they're building what they're building, and sometimes they'll say, well, the product manager told me to, so that's why I'm doing it. And that's not good enough, because you need to understand what those two value, like you summarize it so well there, what those two definitions of value are. And that's why you're building what you're building. It's not because you were told to.
Yeah, that reminds me, actually, I'll give a quick example. I was listening to one of the Satya Nadella's interview, Microsoft CEO. And I think he mentioned in his book, Hit Refresh as well, about this particular incident. His son was undergoing treatment and he was sitting in the hospital, and the hospital computer system were running Windows. So he mentioned that, oh my God, let it work perfectly because his son is undergoing treatment. And I think when you put some software in a life-saving and a safety, mission-critical situations, and you want that software functioning properly, right? So this is more important for you. So you mentioned that, like, developers love coding and they're interested in that kind of a focus and flow and joy, as per the unicorn project ideal number 2. But imagine that if as a developer, if I can connect with the purpose of the company, if the objective of the company, and what is the impact it is doing in the community, in society, or a social thing, I think the impact will be much more powerful. So this is where I love every developer to connect with that objective and the purpose of the company.
Yeah, I believe in that so much. And I mean, you can even see with people talk about different generations, and this idea of purpose and having a meaning for your work is so much more important. It's so much more important, as it should be. But as you see the generations coming through, and with sustainability, etc., people, I think, will come to a time where people will not accept if there isn't a clear value proposition to what they're doing. If they don't get behind that purpose, I think that's going to become massive around that. We talk about the future of work. I think that is a big kind of attribute that you personally connect with the purpose.
Exactly.
Sure.
See, that is one of the reasons why I love DevOps, that term as well, actually, because as an architect, as a developer, your job is not done just building and committing the code, right? It also actually, you look after the code that is running in production and how the customers are using and what kind of experience that they have and the feedback that you get back into your architecture, design, and planning and development. I think it's more important because you get that whole view of how the software being used and what is the impact it is having on the customer and the business. It's more important for the developers.
Yeah, and I've always said that the people who work, you're not a programmer, you're an engineer. You're creating an outcome. You're not creating code or a product. You're actually creating an outcome, and you need to own that outcome. And creating code in the system is just a way you make that outcome happen. So you have to understand what that outcome is, and it's not, your output is not the code. You know what I mean? The outcome is not the code. The outcome is whatever the business deliverable.
Exactly.
So that, I think, there's a huge piece of like engineering culture that has to be in place, and you even talk about psychological safety, because if you say to engineers, I need you to own that outcome. If something's not happening, they need to be able to speak up and really drive how that outcome is met. The very nature of engineering is that you have to be creative in what that solution is. I'm interested in your experience in that kind of that engineering culture shift, and any thoughts around that, because I think that's a massive part of the whole DevOps area.
Exactly, because the one of the things that I think about any enterprise as of today is an IT company, right? Because software is powering your business, whatever the form it is, whether it's you're a cafe. Your software is running in you're running for your billing and your accounting and your customer payments and everything. But if you're a bank, you're a retail, you're a supply chain, you're a travel, cargo, airline, anything and everything is powered by the software. So I think for developers or engineers, I use a term called engineering excellence. Engineering excellence is actually a mindset and a culture within the software units or within the technology units of this enterprise, where they have a top talent and a high density talent, and who can solve the problem for customers, right? Because one of the things that I really like about, I read about in a blog post about this is customer, they were never actually center of the attraction. It's for developers. It's always actually the problems, what the customer they had. So if somebody says that actually we are centered around customer, no, actually you engineers get excited about when there is actually a challenging problem that we are solving for our customers. Whatever the size, whatever the complexity it is, actually. So that is more important. And for a right engineering mindset, you definitely need a very good environment from a leadership point of view, from your people point of view. You need to have a good environment. You made a point, right? Like, when things are not going well, can I stand up and then can I speak out and say that, hey, this is something that's not going in the right way. Can we get that, turn the ship around, or maybe adjust that and put it on the track? I think these modern day developers, they are pretty good in doing it, actually, because I really like how many people these days, like I started writing code back in 1995, and those days we had only limited resources for looking at for help and everything. But you look at as of today, there are plenty of ways that you can resources in terms of reading, watching from YouTube or Udemy or LinkedIn Learning or blog posts from Personal and Stack Overflow and well architect papers from AWS and Azure and all the stuff. So you have plenty of resources. Now, what you need for this developers is actually people are feeling comfortable in sharing their experiences outside, and they share from an organizational point of view. Now, in order to do that, you definitely need actually a really friendly environment where the people can stand up and speak up, right? And also, I've seen the other side of things, like when the engineers, they don't feel that they are not in an organization where it's promoting or safeguarding or helping with the psychological safety, they keep moving out, to a different organization. They look for different opportunities, right? Or sometimes the developers, they put their head down and then they don't give their best. Sometimes that happens as well, like, because they don't have options and they're stuck in some smaller organization or maybe a big organization, they do it. I think in the engineering culture, what you mentioned about that value engineering, or what I call as an engineering excellence, in my view, is very critical as of today when software is powering your business. Okay, I think that is definitely you need a right culture, you need a right commitment from your leadership, and you need ways to encourage people to come and share this experience with you internally. Right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's the term that myself, Mark, and like use all the time. The aspect of engineering excellence it's a fantastic term, and for me, there's a sense of pride. It's creating a sense of pride in what the engineers do, and it's okay to not have that defined perfectly. The engineers will know what engineering, and as engineering leaders, we can assess what that is. I used to talk about it like Daniel Pink's drive, that motivation, the autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose. That translate that to engineering excellence, because that's the things that it's not about following a checklist or doing a certain thing. It's about just, we know what good looks like, and I think that's taking pride in that, and stopping something because you're not happy with the quality of it. So I think that's absolutely fundamental. And I remember those days of sitting on a Unix workstation in the 90s with one book in your desk, probably Adrian Cockcroft's book. So it's very different now. There's a lot more support. And I actually think a lot of us who were coding back in the 90s with all the Unix, now that the cloud has come along, it's almost like a resurgence of all those things we learned 20 years ago. Are you seeing many, I don't want to use the word failed cloud transformations, but I think I'll phrase it a different way. A lot of people have moved to the cloud, and I don't think they've realized the value that they thought they would have. Have you experienced that have you seen much of that, or much thoughts? Because I think the cloud's fantastic and there's lots of excitement, but you really need engineering excellence to make it work well.
Yep.
You don't get it for free. Yeah,
that's right. So I would not attribute that as actually a failure, but I would say a lot of organizations, they are struggling, in that space, because as you hit on the bullseye, moving to the cloud is not actually just a business decision, right? So it is actually, you need a technology, people people who are experts in understanding those kind of things and how they can make this viable for your business to run. And one of the biggest challenge, a couple of days before I was with a client and we were talking about it, have you thought about like CapEx and OpEx, kind of a fundamental thing? Because in a traditional IT, where you have a data center and you have design and a lot of capitalizable work in that space, but when you move to a rental model, the CapEx is very little and the OpEx is more. And also the business previously, they never worried or thought about how much is actually the dollar that I pay for running my business application, because it's a shared infrastructure in your data center. And you thought about is actually, okay, you developed an application, deployed it and running successfully. That's great. But there was no, running cost associated with it from an infrastructure point of view. Yes. Right. Even the patching conversations are interesting. For example, like when you want to upgrade the application to upgrade your Java or upgrade your .NET framework and associated libraries, etc. And it's always actually challenging to go and secure funding from business for doing that. Or business, the application is running fine. Why should I do it?
Yeah, completely. And I mean, there's a whole education there. And again, we talk about that in the book quite a lot around kind of FinOps and OpEx versus CapEx. Yeah. And one of the stories that I thought was brilliant, that was in the press from Liberty Mutual, was when I think it was one or two developers refactored an application to move it from being on-prem to serverless. And I think the figures that are approximate, that they reduced the cost from $50,000 a year down to $20 a year.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like 50,000 down to 20, like just 20. And people are always going like, oh, you mean 20,000? It's like, no, 20.
$20. Yeah.
And because if you do that work well, then the cloud will, the provider will like take care of a lot of the security, maintenance, patching and stuff. So I mean, there is huge savings to be had. But again, you really need to get your kind of engineering sort of and your cloud skills. You need to get those right before you start that journey, I think. Yeah.
I'll share a couple of things, because you touched upon an interesting point for me. Number one, back in 2013, 2014, when we need to provision a virtual machine, it used to take 2 weeks time, because you're provisioning a virtual machine on your on-prem data center. So it means like you need to fill in some kind of an Excel sheet or a Word document template, send it to an ops folks or infrastructure folks. They manually craft that machine and then give you that, right? Now, I was talking to one of my friend a couple of years before. He went through the same exercise of requesting for a virtual machine on a cloud in an enterprise organization. Within this, they were using, I think, like AWS. And he mentioned that it took 6 weeks for him to get the virtual machine on AWS from an internal cloud team. And I think so are you going back or you're, I think that is one, because sometimes what happens, you add some extra layers and the process in terms of becomes really bureaucratic, right? And you don't really get the value out of it. That is number one, right? And you need to really change your organization. So I agree with you. It's not just about finding the right skill, but also organization has to also change the entire process, their thinking, and the working culture has to change as well when you adopt to cloud. Because cloud, I would say, I really love the book Adrian wrote, What Cloud for CEOs, right? And I would say, remove the CEO, give that book for everybody, because everyone needs to read about that and understand. And also sometimes I think that some excitement, we go and build some systems, and then you look at the bill after that in a month, you get more than what you used to run on-prem. And that is not something really goes well as well with the business. So you need to really understand how you need to be savvy in terms of your technology and technical expertise and cloud skills. But at the same time, you need to be savvy in terms of your cost and optimization as well. That's more important for the business, right? Yeah. Because investments are getting return on value. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. I mean, I think I hate when companies put a layer in front of the cloud. You take the old infrastructure team and put it in front of the cloud. I just think it's completely stupid. It's missing the point. You need to let the developers kind of loose with guardrails and the correct governance. And then you can't build the same way. You can't build the same way in the cloud. You're going to build in a different way and take advantage of the new services. So yeah, I think there's so much more to explore in this area. But
Yeah.
I suppose for us, I mean, the next thing is we've got the DevOps Enterprise Summit coming up in a few weeks, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
So,
DevOps Enterprise Summit is something like, in my view, it's one of the top, conference when it comes to DevOps, and especially the challenges around enterprise organization, government, and bank, and sports like Adidas and other companies. Like they come and share their stories, and they showcase what they have done, how they've done. I think it's an amazing. The 3 days is I have to admit this. Actually, I'm a crazy learner. I go and sit in every session. I make notes, and I tweet about it or record about it and make some notes about it and think about, reflect upon after this. So I don't even miss out actually one session if I'm attending all the breakout sessions in DevOps Enterprise. And I'm definitely looking forward for this one. I mean, this is we are doing after 3 years in person. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, the DevOps Enterprise community, and also, you and your mates, Mark, and yeah.
It should be good fun. And are you planning any more events in New Zealand, in the DevOps New Zealand events, or?
Yeah, we did one this year, which we call Cloud Native Summit, and I was co-chairing the event. Me and my friend Christine Mazur, we did this together, and in the first week of August. And we are planning to we are also would like to encourage a lot of students community in this region to help them to contribute to open source projects. And we are planning some events as part of the CNCF, because I'm a CNCF ambassador for New Zealand.
Yes.
I run some meetups in the space. So my target area is actually how do we encourage these people in this region to contribute to open source project, and especially in the students community. So that is something we are thinking about it. We are planning to run like an upstream contribution workshops, helping in the community. And also DevOps New Zealand, the last event was in 2019. And after that, we were in the pandemic. So we haven't thought about running that yet, but I'm core part of the organizing member of that DevOps New Zealand as well. So we are looking forward, like probably next year, much more events and bringing people together. But there are a lot of events started happening now in person in this region, so which is really exciting to see people in person.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm super. I love New Zealand. I spent a month there a few years ago, and I thought it was fantastic. So I'd love to come back. But no. So I'd love to hear more about the events and love to help kind of socializing. So I think it's like what you're doing is fantastic. And so, but listen, thanks so much. It's been great. It's been great having a conversation, and it's been great talking to you. We're looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time over at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. So
thank you very much, David. Yeah, thank you very much, David, and thanks for having me in this episode. And nice sharing some of my experiences with you, and also talking about cloud. And probably this kind of conversation will help someone to think more in about the journey that they are having, they're going through when it comes to DevOps or cloud. And also wishing you best of luck for your DevOps Enterprise Summit. I think you're doing a talk, is it right?
Yes, I'm doing a talk on kind of the book, and then doing some of the workshops on wordly mapping as well. I think there's 1 or 2 workshops I'm doing on wordly mapping, so that should be fun and make a few heads hurt.
Excellent.
That's
good. Yeah,
right. Thanks very much.
Keen to join you in that, and then I'm definitely eagerly looking forward to seeing you and your team at DevOps Enterprise Summit. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you. All right. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.